Ambassador Kelrix adjusted his ceremonial robes as the massive doors to the Grand Assembly Hall opened with a deep, resonant hum. The Zephyrian diplomat had attended hundreds of these gatherings over his 40-year career, but today felt different. Today, the Interstellar Conclave would finally address the question that had puzzled the galaxy's greatest minds for nearly 3 decades. What exactly were humans? The hall stretched before him like a cathedral of crystal and starlight. Delegates from 473 worlds filled the amphitheater-style seating, their diverse forms creating a tapestry of evolution's endless creativity. The crystalline hierarchy occupied the upper tiers, their bodies catching and refracting the chamber's ambient light into rainbow cascades. Below them, the fluid-form Oceanic Confederation rippled in their specialized atmosphere tanks, while the Insectoid Hive Collective maintained their perfect formations in the central sections. Kelrix found his designated seat among the Zephyrian delegation, nodding to his colleagues. Admiral Thexna, her scarred carapace bearing witness to countless battles, gave him a respectful bow. "Any word from the research committee?" she asked, her translator rendering her clicking speech into standard galactic. "The archivists have been working around the clock," Kelrix replied, settling into his bioadaptive chair. "Apparently, they've made a breakthrough that changes everything we thought we knew about the humans." The humans, such a small word for such a large problem. When first contact had been established with Earth 32 years ago, the Conclave had followed standard protocols. They cataloged human biology, psychology, and technology. They assigned them a classification code and prepared integration procedures. It should have been routine. But nothing about humans had proven routine. The research teams had expected to find another standard carbon-based species with predictable traits and limitations. Instead, they discovered beings that defied every known biological and psychological model. Humans were simultaneously fragile and nearly indestructible. They were illogical yet brilliantly strategic. They formed bonds across species barriers that shouldn't exist and showed mercy to enemies that had tried to destroy them. Dr. Yelana, the Conclave's chief xenobiologist, had submitted a report 3 months ago that had caused heated debates in every committee. Her conclusion was unprecedented in galactic history. Humans might not actually be a single species at all, but rather something far more complex and potentially dangerous. The great ceremonial bells chimed, their haunting melody silencing the assembled thousands. High Chancellor Omrix rose from the central dais, her ancient form commanding immediate respect. The eternal mother of the Silicon Collective had guided the Conclave for over 800 years, and her wisdom was legendary throughout the galaxy. "Honored delegates," her voice resonated through bioacoustic amplifiers that translated her silicon-based communication into forms every species could understand. "We gather today to address findings that may fundamentally alter our understanding of galactic civilization itself." A murmur rippled through the assembly. Kelrix noticed that even the normally stoic Hive Collective showed signs of agitation, their perfect formations shifting slightly. 32 years ago, Chancellor Omrix continued, we welcomed what we believed to be a new member species to our galactic community. The beings from the third planet of the Sol system identified themselves as humans, and we proceeded with standard integration protocols. However, extensive research has revealed that these beings are unlike anything we have encountered in our 10,000 years of galactic civilization. The massive holographic displays throughout the chamber activated, showing images from humanity's first contact. Kelrix remembered watching the original footage with fascination. The human delegation had seemed so ordinary, bipedal mammals with basic technology and simple social structures. Their spokesperson, a woman named Sarah Chen, had been polite, curious, and remarkably adaptable to galactic customs. "What we initially interpreted as a young, developing species," the Chancellor said, "has proven to be something far more significant. The research committee has spent 3 decades studying human behavior, biology, and history. Their findings are unprecedented." Dr. Yelana stepped forward, her crystalline form shimmering with nervous energy. As the galaxy's foremost expert on species classification, her reputation was built on precise, conservative analysis. The fact that she looked visibly shaken had not gone unnoticed by the assembly. "Honorable delegates," Dr. Yelana began, her usually confident voice carrying a tremor. What I am about to share will challenge everything we believe about evolution, consciousness, and the nature of intelligent life itself. The chamber fell silent, except for the subtle hum of environmental systems maintaining atmospheric conditions for hundreds of different species. Even the typically chattering mercurial traders had ceased their constant negotiations. After 32 years of intensive study, we have discovered that the term human is not actually the name of their species. It is something far more disturbing. Human is a designation they use to describe their current evolutionary state, a state they actively chose rather than one imposed by natural selection. Shocked gasps echoed from multiple sections of the assembly. The very concept of choosing one's evolutionary path was theoretically possible, but had never been observed in any known species. Furthermore, Dr. Yelana continued, our archaeological teams have uncovered evidence that this species has undergone complete biological and psychological transformations multiple times throughout their planetary history. Each time, they have retained the designation human, while becoming something entirely different from what they were before. Admiral Thexna leaned toward Kelrix, her translator struggling with her rapid, agitated speech. This cannot be possible. Evolution doesn't work that way. Species adapt gradually over millions of years, not by conscious choice. But Dr. Yelana was already displaying holographic evidence. Analysis of their genetic material reveals markers indicating at least 7 major evolutionary transitions, each triggered by external pressures, but guided by conscious species-wide decisions. The beings we know as humans are actually version 8 of their species' lineage. The implications hit the assembly like a shock wave. Species throughout the galaxy had evolved along predictable paths, developing specific traits that defined their nature and limitations. The idea that a species could consciously redesign itself challenged the fundamental assumptions upon which galactic civilization was built. What you're suggesting, called out Representative Quillian from the Merchant Alliance, is that humans are not bound by the biological and psychological limitations that govern all other known life, that they can simply change what they are. That is exactly what I'm suggesting, Dr. Yelana replied. And the evidence supports this conclusion. Human individuals demonstrate capabilities that vary so dramatically that they would be classified as different subspecies if found in any other population. Some humans can survive in environments that would kill most galactic species, while others require life support for the most basic activities. Some display computational abilities that rival our best artificial intelligences, while others appear to operate on pure emotional intuition. The holographic displays showed footage of humans in various extreme situations. Rescue workers walking into burning buildings to save strangers. Scientists solving theoretical problems that had puzzled galactic researchers for centuries. Individuals lifting massive weights to save trapped victims. Artists creating works that moved alien psychology in ways previously thought impossible. We initially attributed these variations to individual differences, Dr. Yelana explained. But pattern analysis reveals something far more complex. Humans appear to have the ability to consciously activate dormant genetic sequences, enabling rapid physical and psychological adaptation to virtually any situation. Kelrix felt his internal temperature regulation struggling to maintain equilibrium. As a diplomat, he had met many humans during trade negotiations and cultural exchanges. He had always been impressed by their adaptability and resilience, but he had attributed these qualities to their diverse backgrounds and experiences. If what you're saying is true, he found himself standing and addressing the assembly, then humans are not just another species joining our galactic community. They are something that could potentially replace us all. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. The concept of a species that could consciously evolve, that could adapt to any environment or challenge, was more than scientifically fascinating. It was existentially terrifying. Chancellor Omrix raised her hand for silence. The research committee has been investigating that exact possibility. Dr. Yelana, please share your findings regarding human expansion patterns. Dr. Yelana's form dimmed noticeably. Our analysis of human colonization efforts reveals patterns consistent with conscious species development rather than random expansion. They do not simply settle suitable worlds. They appear to be systematically exposing themselves to environmental challenges that trigger adaptive responses. The holographic displays showed human colonies on worlds that should have been uninhabitable. Ice planets where the average temperature would freeze most galactic species solid. High-radiation worlds that should have caused immediate cellular breakdown. Gravity wells so intense that most known materials would compress under their own weight. In each case, Dr. Yelana continued, the human populations have not only survived but thrived. More importantly, they have developed new capabilities specifically adapted to their environments, and these capabilities appear to be transmissible to other humans through unknown mechanisms. The revelation struck the assembly like a physical blow. If humans could share adaptive traits across their population, they could potentially develop resistances to any threat, solutions to any challenge, and advantages in any competition. Representative Zaroth from the warrior clans stood, his massive form bristling with barely contained aggression. Are you telling us that we have welcomed a species that can consciously evolve to defeat any opponent, survive any weapon, and adapt to any strategy we might employ against them? The question crystallized the fear that had been building throughout the presentation. The conclave had been established to maintain peace and cooperation among diverse species by recognizing that each had strengths and limitations that prevented any one group from dominating the others. Balance was maintained because no species could adapt quickly enough to overcome the combined advantages of all others. But if humans could consciously evolve, that balance was meaningless. Dr. Yelana's response was barely audible. Our models suggest that humans may not even be aware of the full extent of their capabilities. They appear to treat their adaptive abilities as normal aspects of existence. They have no concept that what they do is impossible according to every known law of evolutionary biology. Then why, asked Chancellor Omrix, do they continue to identify themselves as a single species? If they can change what they are at will, why maintain the designation human? That, Dr. Yelana replied, is the most disturbing discovery of all. Our linguistic analysis team has finally decoded the actual meaning of the word human in their original language. It is not a species designation. It is a statement of purpose. The silence in the chamber was absolute. 473 civilizations held their breath, waiting for an answer that would change everything. The word human, Dr. Yelana said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was revealing, translates roughly to those who choose what they become. It is not describing what they are, but what they do. They are not humans because of their biology or psychology. They are humans because they refuse to accept limitations imposed by biology, physics, or circumstance. The implications cascaded through the assembly like a wave of realization. Every species in the galaxy had evolved to fill specific ecological niches, developing strengths and accepting limitations. They had built their civilizations around working within those constraints, cooperating with other species to overcome their individual weaknesses. Humans, apparently, had rejected that entire paradigm. Dr. Yelana, Admiral Thexna's voice cut through the stunned silence, are you saying that we have been interacting with a species that considers the laws of biology to be suggestions rather than absolute limitations? I am saying, Dr. Yelana replied, that we have been interacting with something that we do not have adequate terminology to describe. They are not a species in any sense that we understand. They are a continuously evolving phenomenon that maintains continuity through conscious choice rather than genetic inheritance. Kelrix realized that his hands were shaking. Throughout his decades of diplomatic service, he had prided himself on understanding the motivations and limitations of the species he worked with. Now he was forced to confront the possibility that everything he thought he knew about humanity was fundamentally wrong. The holographic displays shifted to show recent diplomatic exchanges. Kelrix recognized several of the human representatives he had worked with personally. Sarah Chen, now serving as Earth's senior ambassador to the Conclave. Dr. James Wright, the physicist whose theories had solved energy distribution problems that had plagued galactic civilization for centuries. Captain Maria Santos, whose unconventional military strategies had revolutionized peacekeeping operations. These individuals, Dr. Yelana continued, represent just a fraction of human variability. Our psychological profiles indicate that humans do not develop along predictable paths. Instead, they appear to consciously choose personality traits, intellectual capabilities, and even physical characteristics based on what they determine to be necessary or desirable. The evidence was overwhelming. Humans who had completely changed their fundamental nature in response to trauma, opportunity, or simple curiosity. Individuals who had developed expertise in fields they had never studied, simply by deciding they needed to understand them. Groups that had overcome impossible odds by collectively becoming whatever was required to succeed. Chancellor Omrix's voice resonated through the chamber with ancient authority. The question before us now is not whether humans are dangerous. The question is whether they are compatible with galactic civilization as we have constructed it. The words hit every delegate with the force of absolute truth. Galactic civilization was based on predictability, cooperation between species with known capabilities and limitations, and mutual dependence that prevented any one group from dominating the others. But humans could potentially become anything. They could develop the strengths of every known species while discarding their own weaknesses. They could adapt to any environment, overcome any challenge, and evolve beyond any attempt to contain or control them. What, asked Representative Quillian, do we do with this information? It was the question that would define the future of galactic civilization. The answer would determine whether humanity remained a welcome member of the Conclave or became something far more problematic. Chancellor Omrix surveyed the assembly, her ancient eyes reflecting the weight of the decision that lay before them. We have three options, she said finally. We can attempt to contain human expansion until we better understand the implications of their capabilities. We can accelerate integration efforts and hope that their commitment to peaceful cooperation will prevent them from becoming a threat. Or we can take preemptive action to protect the stability of galactic civilization. The third option hung in the air unspoken, but understood. Preemptive action meant treating humanity as an existential threat to all other species in the galaxy. Before we make any decisions, Dr. Yelana interjected, there is one more thing you need to know. Our research has revealed that humans are not unique in their evolutionary approach. We have found evidence of at least 3 other species in our historical records that demonstrated similar adaptive capabilities. The revelation sent another shock wave through the assembly. If humans were not unique, then the implications were even more staggering. What happened to those species? Admiral Thexna demanded. Dr. Yelana's form flickered with something that might have been fear. We don't know. The historical records simply show that they existed, demonstrated rapid evolutionary adaptation, and then disappeared from galactic civilization entirely. The chamber erupted in chaos as the implications of this final revelation struck home. If humanity was following a pattern that had occurred before, and if previous species with similar capabilities had vanished, then the stakes were even higher than anyone had imagined. Kelrick sat in stunned silence as delegates around him demanded answers, proposed actions, and argued about the future of galactic civilization itself. He thought about the humans he had worked with, their enthusiasm for cooperation, and their genuine interest in learning about other cultures. But now he had to wonder, were those traits genuine, or were they simply the current adaptation of a species that could become anything it chose to be? The question would haunt him as the Conclave struggled to decide humanity's fate, and perhaps the fate of every other species in the galaxy. The emergency session of the Conclave's Security Council convened in the Obsidian Chamber, a room designed for the galaxy's most sensitive discussions. Unlike the Grand Assembly Hall, this space was austere and intimidating, its dark walls absorbing sound and light to create an atmosphere of absolute secrecy. Only the most senior representatives from each major civilization faction were present, along with the individuals responsible for the shocking revelations about humanity. General Castrix of the United Defense Coalition took his position at the crescent-shaped table, his cybernetic implants casting eerie shadows in the chamber's subdued lighting. As the military commander responsible for galactic security, he had been the first to grasp the strategic implications of Dr. Yelana's research. His species, the mechanized hegemony, had survived countless wars through superior technology and tactical planning. But how could anyone plan against an enemy that could become whatever was needed to defeat any strategy? Dr. Yelana, General Castrix began without preamble, I need you to explain exactly what you meant when you said 3 other species with similar capabilities had disappeared. Disappeared how, when, and why don't we have detailed records? Dr. Yelana's crystalline form pulsed with nervous energy as she accessed the ancient archives. The records are fragmentary, general. The first species we've identified existed approximately 8,000 years ago. They were called the Shapers, and historical references describe them as beings who could become one with any environment. The records show them expanding rapidly across multiple star systems. Then suddenly, all references to them cease within a span of 50 years. She paused, her form dimming as she processed more data. The second species was the Adaptive Collective, recorded approximately 5,000 years ago. They demonstrated the ability to consciously evolve their entire population to meet any challenge. Like the Shapers, they expanded aggressively, then vanished completely from all historical records. And the third, Admiral Thexna prompted, her scarred carapace reflecting the chamber's minimal lighting. The Eternal Changers, Dr. Yelana replied. 3,000 years ago, they were described as beings who could transform not just their biology, but their fundamental nature. The records suggest they could become energy, matter, or consciousness at will. They also disappeared, but not before leaving behind a single message that we only recently decoded. General Castrix leaned forward. What did it say? Dr. Yelana's form flickered with what could only be interpreted as fear. It said, "We have chosen to become what we must. Forgive us for what we will take from you." The silence that followed was deafening. Each delegate understood the implication. These species hadn't simply vanished. They had evolved beyond the need for galactic civilization entirely, possibly consuming or displacing other species in the process. Chancellor Omrix spoke with the weight of her centuries. The pattern is clear. Species with conscious evolutionary control expand rapidly, then transcend their original forms entirely. The question is whether this transcendence is voluntary or whether it's an inevitable result of their capabilities. There's another possibility, interjected Dr. Vexhai from the Temporal Research Institute. The elderly chronarch rarely spoke in these meetings, but when he did, his words carried the authority of someone who had studied the flow of time itself. Based on my analysis of temporal fluctuations around the disappearance points, these species may not have vanished from our timeline. They may have removed themselves from linear time entirely. The implications hit everyone simultaneously. If these species had evolved beyond normal spacetime, they might still exist, watching and possibly influencing galactic civilization from outside conventional reality. Dr. Vexhai, General Castrix said carefully, are you suggesting that these species became so advanced that they transcended physical existence? I'm suggesting, the chronarch replied, that conscious evolutionary control may inevitably lead to forms of existence that we cannot comprehend or interact with. And if humanity is following the same path, we may be witnessing the early stages of another transcendence event. Ambassador Kelrix felt his diplomatic training crumbling under the weight of these revelations. But humans seem so normal. They form friendships, they struggle with everyday problems, they make mistakes. How could they be on the verge of transcending reality itself? Dr. Yelana adjusted her displays to show recent surveillance footage from human colonies. That's what makes them so dangerous. Unlike the previous species, humans don't appear to be aware of their full potential. They treat their adaptive abilities as minor variations rather than revolutionary capabilities. The footage showed human children playing on worlds with crushing gravity that would immediately kill most galactic species. Workers repairing equipment in radiation fields that should have been lethal. Farmers cultivating crops in soil that chemical analysis proved was toxic to all known forms of life. They're adapting unconsciously, Dr. Yelana explained. Each generation becomes more capable than the last, but they interpret this as normal development rather than radical evolutionary change. They have no idea they're following the same pattern as species that eventually transcended physical reality. Representative Morthak from the Ancient Covenant, one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations, spoke in his species' characteristic whisper. My people have legends about the Eternal Changers. According to our most sacred texts, they didn't simply disappear. They became something that could reshape reality itself. The legends say they grew beyond individual consciousness and became a collective force that could rewrite the laws of physics. Legends, General Castrix said dismissively. We need facts, not mythology. The facts support the legends, Dr. Vexhai interrupted. My temporal analysis shows reality distortions around the disappearance points that are consistent with fundamental alterations to spacetime itself. These weren't simple vanishings. They were transformations that affected the basic structure of existence. The room fell silent as each delegate contemplated the possibility that humanity was destined to become something beyond their ability to understand or control. The comfortable assumptions that had guided galactic civilization for millennia were crumbling under the weight of evidence that evolution itself might not follow the rules they thought they understood. "There's something else," Dr. Yelana said reluctantly. "Our psychological analysis teams have identified humans who appear to be in early stages of transcendence. They demonstrate capabilities that violate known physical laws, but they're completely unaware that what they're doing should be impossible." She displayed footage of a human woman named Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist working on Kepler 442b, a world with atmospheric conditions that should prevent any Earth-based life from functioning. The footage showed Dr. Vasquez working without environmental protection in an atmosphere that would cause immediate respiratory failure in humans. When questioned, Dr. Yelana explained, Dr. Vasquez insisted that she was using standard breathing equipment. "Our instruments show no such equipment, yet she continues to function normally in an environment that should kill her within minutes." More footage appeared. A human engineer named Carlos Singh repairing a quantum fusion reactor with his bare hands, manipulating components that operated at temperatures exceeding solar core conditions. When interviewed, Singh claimed he was using insulated tools that surveillance clearly showed did not exist. "They're unconsciously altering reality around themselves," Dr. Yelana continued. "But their minds are editing the experience to make it seem normal and explainable. They literally cannot perceive their own transcendence." General Castrix stood abruptly, his mechanical components whirring with agitation. "This is unacceptable. We have a species that's unconsciously evolving beyond physical limitations, following a pattern that has historically led to the complete disappearance of civilizations. They could become threats to the fundamental structure of reality itself, and they don't even know it." "What are you suggesting?" Chancellor Omrix asked, though her tone indicated she already knew the answer. "Preemptive containment," General Castrix replied without hesitation. "We isolate human space, restrict their expansion, and study them under controlled conditions until we understand the full extent of their capabilities and potential threat." "That's tantamount to declaring war on an entire species," Admiral Thexna protested. "Humans have been nothing but cooperative members of galactic civilization. They've contributed breakthrough technologies, provided military support for peacekeeping operations, and demonstrated genuine commitment to interspecies cooperation." "Have they?" Dr. Yelana asked quietly. "Or have they simply been unconsciously manipulating us to perceive their actions as beneficial? Our analysis suggests that human contributions to galactic civilization consistently serve to strengthen their position and expand their influence." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. The idea that humanity's apparent cooperation might be unconscious manipulation was even more terrifying than overt aggression. Representative Quillian leaned forward, his merchant instincts alert to the implications. "Dr. Yelana, are you saying that humans have been unconsciously conducting a psychological campaign to make us trust them while they evolve beyond our ability to control or predict?" "I'm saying," Dr. Yelana replied, "that the pattern of human behavior is consistent with unconscious preparation for transcendence. They're building relationships, gathering information, and establishing positions throughout galactic civilization in ways that would be strategically optimal if they were planning to become something beyond our current understanding." The evidence was circumstantial but compelling. Human diplomats who seemed to intuitively understand alien psychology better than trained xenopsychologists. Human scientists who made breakthrough discoveries in fields they had no formal training in. Human merchants who consistently negotiated deals that seemed fair but ultimately strengthened human economic positions. "Even if that's true," Ambassador Kelrix argued, "it assumes malicious intent. What if humans are unconsciously preparing for transcendence because it's their natural evolutionary path? What if they're building relationships and gathering knowledge because some part of them knows they'll need allies and understanding when they become whatever they're destined to become?" Dr. Vexhai spoke with the authority of someone who had observed the flow of time across millennia. "Intention is irrelevant. The pattern remains the same regardless of motivation. A species develops conscious evolutionary control, expands rapidly, builds complex relationships with other civilizations, then transcends physical reality in ways that fundamentally alter the nature of existence itself. And General Castrix added grimly, every species they leave behind is affected by that transcendence. The historical record shows massive disruptions to galactic civilization following each disappearance. Trade networks collapse, political alliances dissolve, and entire civilizations sometimes vanish without explanation. The weight of that revelation settled over the assembly like a physical presence. If humanity was following the same pattern, then galactic civilization itself might be at risk. We have to consider another possibility, Dr. Yelana said hesitantly. What if the transcendence events aren't just evolutionary developments? What if they're deliberately triggered by the species involved as a form of escape or protection? What do you mean? Chancellor Omrix asked. All three previous species faced increasing scrutiny and concern from galactic civilization as their capabilities became apparent. Historical records show growing fear, isolation attempts, and in at least one case, preparation for preemptive military action. What if transcendence was their response to perceived threats from other species? The implication was staggering. If transcendence was a defensive response rather than a natural evolutionary path, then the Conclave's current discussions might be triggering the very event they were trying to prevent. You're saying, Admiral Thexna said slowly, that by recognizing the threat humans might pose, we could be forcing them to become that threat. I'm saying, Dr. Yelana replied, that conscious evolutionary control might include the ability to transcend reality when faced with existential threats. If humans perceive galactic civilization as a danger to their existence, they might unconsciously trigger the same transformation that removed three other species from normal spacetime. General Castrix turned to the assembly, his cybernetic implants glowing with increased activity as he processed tactical scenarios. Then we have a choice. We can attempt to manage humanity's development through cooperation and hope they choose a transcendence path that doesn't threaten other species. Or we can take preemptive action to prevent transcendence entirely, knowing that our actions might trigger the very response we're trying to prevent. The paradox was perfect and terrifying. Any action the Conclave took to protect itself from human transcendence might cause that transcendence to occur. But allowing humanity to develop unchecked might lead to the same result. There's a third option, Ambassador Kelrick said quietly. We could tell them what we've discovered. The suggestion hit the assembly like a shock wave. The idea of informing humanity about their unconscious evolutionary trajectory was unprecedented and potentially catastrophic. Absolutely not, General Castrix responded immediately. If humans become conscious of their transcendence potential, they might actively pursue it rather than stumbling toward it unconsciously. Or, Kelrix countered, they might choose to control their development in ways that preserve galactic civilization. Humans have demonstrated genuine concern for other species. If they understood the implications of their evolutionary path, they might find ways to transcend that don't threaten everyone else. Dr. Vexhai spoke with the certainty of someone who had studied temporal patterns across cosmic time scales. Conscious knowledge of transcendence potential has historically accelerated the process rather than controlling it. The moment humans understand what they're capable of, they will begin actively exploring those capabilities. Which brings us back to our original dilemma, Chancellor Omrix observed. We cannot control humanity's development without risking the very outcomes we're trying to prevent. But we cannot ignore the threat they potentially represent to the fundamental nature of galactic civilization. The chamber fell silent as each delegate contemplated the impossible choice before them. How do you protect civilization from beings who might unconsciously reshape reality itself? How do you manage a species that could become anything they chose to be? The answer would determine not just humanity's fate, but the future of every conscious being in the galaxy. The message arrived at exactly 3:47 Galactic Standard Time, transmitted simultaneously to every major conclave facility across 473 worlds. No one had authorized the transmission. No human ships were detected near any conclave communication networks. Yet somehow, a simple text message appeared on every priority communications channel in the galaxy, written in perfect translation for each species' native language. We know you're afraid. We would like to talk. The message was signed simply, Humanity. Within hours, The obsidian chamber was once again filled with the galaxy's most senior leaders, their faces reflecting the mix of fear and confusion that had become constant companions since Dr. Yelana's revelations. The impossible transmission had accomplished something that decades of diplomatic protocol could never achieve. It had focused every major civilization's attention on a single, urgent priority. General Castrix paced the chamber's perimeter, his cybernetic implants working at maximum capacity as he tried to understand how humans had simultaneously accessed secure communication networks across the galaxy. "The technological implications are staggering," he muttered. "Our best analysts can't even begin to explain how this transmission was possible." Dr. Yelana's crystalline form flickered with rapid data processing. "It's worse than that, General. Analysis of the transmission shows no digital footprint whatsoever. The message didn't travel through our networks. It simply appeared in our systems as if it had always been there." "Which means," Dr. Vexai added quietly, "that we may be witnessing the first deliberate demonstration of reality manipulation. Humans appear to have reached the point where they can alter the fundamental nature of information itself." Chancellor Omrix maintained her composure despite the magnitude of the crisis. "The question is whether they're consciously demonstrating this capability, or whether it's still unconscious development triggered by our surveillance and discussions." "Does it matter?" Admiral Thexna asked. "Whether it's conscious or unconscious, they've just proven they can bypass every security system in galactic civilization. They could have sent threats, demands, or even some form of mental manipulation. Instead, they asked to talk." The simple reasonableness of the human response was perhaps the most unsettling aspect of the entire situation. A species capable of manipulating reality had used that capability to request a conversation. Ambassador Kelrix reviewed the transmission data for the 100th time. "The message shows remarkable restraint. They acknowledged our fear without demanding explanations. They didn't make threats or attempt to justify their capabilities. They simply offered dialogue." "Or," General Castrix countered, "they're sophisticated enough to know that appearing reasonable is the most effective way to manipulate us into compliance. A species capable of unconscious reality manipulation might also be capable of unconscious psychological manipulation on a scale we can't comprehend." The debate was interrupted by an alert from the chamber's communication systems. Another message had arrived, this time directed specifically to the obsidian chamber itself. Once again, no transmission source could be detected. "We understand your security concerns. We're sending a single representative to the coordinates included in this message. She will arrive unarmed and submit to any scanning or containment procedures you consider necessary. Her name is Dr. Sarah Chen. You know her." The coordinates indicated a neutral space station in the demilitarized zone, roughly equidistant from major galactic civilizations. It was a sensible choice for a first contact scenario, except that humans shouldn't have known about the obsidian chamber's location or even its existence. "They know we're here," Admiral Thexna said unnecessarily. "They know what we're discussing and they know who's involved. That level of surveillance capability surpasses anything in our technological arsenal," General Castrix finished. "They could be monitoring every conversation, every decision, every strategic plan across the entire galaxy." Dr. Yelana processed the implications with her characteristic analytical precision. "If humans have unconsciously developed omniversal surveillance capabilities, then our entire strategic discussion has been pointless. They already know everything we've discovered about their nature and every plan we've considered for dealing with them." The revelation was simultaneously terrifying and oddly reassuring. If humans could monitor galactic civilization completely, their restraint in using that capability suggested either remarkable ethical development or sophisticated long-term planning. "Dr. Chen," Chancellor Omrix mused, "the original first contact ambassador. She's been humanity's primary representative to the Conclave for over 30 years. If anyone can explain what's happening, it would be her." "Assuming she's still entirely human," Dr. Vexai warned. "If humans are unconsciously transcending physical limitations, their representatives might be more advanced than even they realize." The decision to meet with Dr. Chen was inevitable, but the security implications were staggering. How do you contain a representative of a species that can apparently manipulate reality itself? How do you conduct negotiations when the other party might be unconsciously reading your thoughts, monitoring your communications, and altering the fundamental nature of the meeting environment? 3 days later, the neutral station Harmony Point became the site of the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history. The station had been evacuated except for essential personnel, surrounded by the combined fleets of 12 major civilizations, and equipped with every scanning and monitoring device known to galactic science. Dr. Sarah Chen arrived exactly as promised, aboard a simple human transport that submitted without protest to the most intensive security screening in recorded history. The scans revealed nothing unusual except for the disturbing fact that Dr. Chen's biological readings showed impossible stability. Her cellular activity, neural patterns, and metabolic functions displayed none of the normal variations that characterized living beings. She was either perfectly healthy in ways that violated biological law, or she was something that only appeared to be human. The meeting chamber was configured to accommodate the environmental needs of all major species while providing maximum security monitoring. When Dr. Chen entered, she appeared exactly as Ambassador Kelrix remembered her, a middle-aged human woman with graying hair and intelligent eyes, dressed in simple diplomatic attire. "Thank you for agreeing to this meeting," Dr. Chen said, taking her seat with the practiced ease of someone who had spent decades in similar diplomatic situations. "I understand you have concerns about humanity's place in galactic civilization." General Castrix activated his scanning implants, analyzing every aspect of Dr. Chen's presence. "Dr. Chen, are you aware that your recent communications demonstrated capabilities that should be impossible according to every known law of physics and technology?" Dr. Chen paused, and for a moment something flickered in her expression: confusion, concern, or perhaps realization. "I'm not sure what you mean, General. I transmitted standard diplomatic messages through normal channels." "Dr. Chen," Dr. Yelena interjected, "our analysis shows that your messages appeared simultaneously across galactic civilization without using any detectable transmission method. Are you saying you're unaware of how this was accomplished?" The confusion in Dr. Chen's expression deepened. I used the diplomatic communication system aboard my ship. Standard protocols. Perhaps there was some kind of technical malfunction that caused signal amplification." The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable, yet the explanation was impossible. Dr. Chen genuinely believed she had used conventional communication methods, despite clear evidence that she had done something that transcended known technology. Ambassador Kelrix leaned forward. "Dr. Chen, we've discovered some concerning patterns in human development that suggest your species may be undergoing evolutionary changes that could affect all of galactic civilization. Are you aware of any unusual capabilities developing among human populations?" Dr. Chen considered the question carefully. "Humans are adaptable, certainly. We've always been proud of our ability to thrive in diverse environments. But I'm not aware of any changes that would concern other species. We've worked hard to be productive members of the galactic community." "Dr. Chen," Chancellor Omrix spoke with the authority of her centuries, "our research suggests that humans may have the ability to consciously direct their own evolution, potentially developing capabilities that transcend normal biological and physical limitations. Are you saying that humans are unaware of this potential?" For the first time, Dr. Chen showed signs of genuine alarm. "Conscious evolution? That's impossible. Evolution operates over millions of years through natural selection. No species can simply choose to change what they are." The irony was staggering. A woman who had just demonstrated reality manipulation was insisting that conscious evolution was impossible. Dr. Vexhai spoke with quiet intensity. "Dr. Chen, how would you explain the fact that human colonies are thriving on worlds that should be uninhabitable? How would you account for human individuals performing tasks that should be physically impossible?" Dr. Chen frowned. "Humans are resourceful. We use technology and teamwork to overcome environmental challenges. As for impossible tasks, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Could you be more specific?" Dr. Yelena activated her holographic displays, showing the footage of humans functioning in lethal environments without apparent protection. "Can you explain how these individuals are surviving in conditions that would kill most galactic species?" Dr. Chen studied the footage intently. They're clearly using environmental suits and breathing apparatus. I can see the equipment in the recordings. But the recordings showed no such equipment. Everyone in the chamber could see humans working in hard vacuum, toxic atmospheres, and crushing gravitational fields without any protective gear whatsoever. Dr. Chen, General Castrix said carefully, we don't see any protective equipment in these recordings. Are you saying that you perceive equipment that our instruments cannot detect? Dr. Chen looked around the chamber with growing confusion and concern. Of course I can see it. Standard environmental protection. How else could they be working in those conditions? The truth became unavoidably clear. Dr. Chen was unconsciously editing reality to make impossible human capabilities seem normal and explainable. Her mind was literally rewriting her perception of evidence to maintain the illusion that humans operated within normal biological limitations. Dr. Chen, Ambassador Kelrick said gently, what if I told you that our instruments detect no protective equipment in those recordings? What if the humans you're observing are actually surviving those conditions through biological capabilities alone? Dr. Chen's expression shifted through confusion, disbelief, and finally something approaching fear. That's impossible. Humans can't survive in vacuum or breathe toxic atmospheres. We're just normal biological entities. Are you? Dr. Yelena asked. Dr. Chen, your own biological readings show stability patterns that violate known medical science. You appear to be perfectly healthy in ways that should be impossible. The revelation hit Dr. Chen like a physical blow. For a moment, her carefully maintained composure cracked, and something else became visible. A brief flicker of vast intelligence, ancient wisdom, and capabilities that stretched far beyond normal human limitations. Then her expression returned to normal, and she was once again the familiar diplomatic representative they had known for decades. I'm sorry, Dr. Chen said quietly. I'm afraid I don't understand what you're trying to tell me. We're just human. We adapt, we cooperate, we try to contribute to galactic civilization, nothing more. The unconscious editing was so complete that Dr. Chen couldn't even perceive evidence of her own transcendent capabilities. She was simultaneously demonstrating impossible abilities and insisting that such abilities didn't exist. Chancellor Omrix spoke with the weight of her ancient wisdom. Dr. Chen, our research suggests that humanity follows a pattern shared by 3 previous species. All of them developed conscious evolutionary control, expanded rapidly across the galaxy, then transcended physical existence entirely. We're concerned that humanity may be following the same path. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice carried a subtle difference, not quite the same person who had entered the chamber. Chancellor, what happened to those other species? They vanished from normal spacetime, Dr. Vexhai replied. They became something beyond our ability to understand or interact with. And you think that's what humans are becoming? We think, General Castrix said, that humans may be unconsciously preparing for the same kind of transcendence, and we're concerned about what that means for the rest of galactic civilization. Dr. Chen nodded slowly, as if pieces of a vast puzzle were finally falling into place. I see. And you want to know whether humanity will choose a transcendence path that preserves galactic civilization, or whether we'll simply disappear like the others. Can you answer that question? Admiral Thexna asked. Dr. Chen smiled, and for just a moment, her expression held depths that seemed to contain entire universes. Ambassador Thexna, I think the answer to that question depends on something we haven't discussed yet. Which is whether galactic civilization is ready to evolve alongside us. The words hung in the air like a challenge and an invitation. Dr. Chen was no longer just representing humanity. She was representing something far more profound and potentially transformative. Dr. Chen, Ambassador Kelrick said carefully, what exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting, Dr. Chen replied, that transcendence doesn't have to mean disappearance. It could mean expansion. The question is whether the galaxy is ready to become something more than it currently is. The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just following a path toward individual transcendence. They were offering to guide galactic civilization itself toward something entirely new. The silence that followed Dr. Chen's words stretched for nearly a full minute. as each delegate in the chamber grappled with implications that challenged everything they understood about existence itself. The idea that humanity might be offering to guide galactic civilization through some form of collective transcendence was simultaneously fascinating and terrifying. General Castrix was the first to break the silence. "Dr. Chen, are you saying that humanity has the capability to transform other species, to alter the fundamental nature of galactic civilization?" Dr. Chen's expression remained calm, but there was something in her eyes that suggested she was accessing knowledge far beyond anything she had previously revealed. "General, I'm saying that evolution doesn't have to be a solitary journey. The previous species you mentioned, the Shapers, the Adaptive Collective, the Eternal Changers, they each faced the same choice we're facing now. They could transcend alone, or they could wait and help others make the journey with them." "And they chose to transcend alone?" Ambassador Kelrix asked. "They chose self-preservation," Dr. Chen replied. "When galactic civilization began to view them as threats, they decided that transcendence was safer than continued interaction. They weren't wrong, but they also weren't considering all the possibilities." Dr. Yelana's crystalline form pulsed with rapid data processing. "Dr. Chen, are you claiming that humanity can avoid the same pattern? That you can transcend without abandoning galactic civilization?" Dr. Chen turned to face the xenobiologist directly. "Dr. Yelana, what if I told you that the pattern could be broken? That transcendence doesn't have to mean disappearance, but could instead mean expansion, not just for humanity, but for every species willing to make the journey." The concept was overwhelming. The delegates had been preparing for containment, conflict, or abandonment. They had not considered the possibility of inclusive transcendence. "How?" Chancellor Omrix asked, with the directness of someone who had guided civilizations for centuries. "How could transcendence include multiple species with completely different evolutionary paths?" Dr. Chen stood and moved to the chamber's central holographic display. With a gesture that seemed casual but produced effects that violated several known laws of physics, she activated systems that should have required security clearances and technical interfaces. "Because," she said as images began appearing in the display, "transcendence isn't about becoming something different. It's about becoming what you were always capable of being." The holographic display showed the evolutionary histories of dozens of galactic species, but not as they appeared in official records. These timelines revealed hidden potentials, suppressed capabilities, and evolutionary paths that had been abandoned in favor of specialization and limitation. "Every species in galactic civilization has the potential for conscious evolution," Dr. Chen explained. "The difference is that most species chose stability over growth, predictability over possibility. Humanity chose differently, but that doesn't mean other species can't make the same choice." Dr. Vexhai leaned forward, his ancient understanding of temporal patterns alert to the implications. "Dr. Chen, are you saying that conscious evolutionary control is a capability that all intelligent species possess, but most have chosen not to develop?" "I'm saying," Dr. Chen replied, "that the biological and psychological limitations you consider fundamental aspects of your species are actually choices your ancestors made, choices that can be unmade." The revelation struck each delegate differently. For some, it offered hope of capabilities they had never imagined. For others, it represented the terrifying prospect of fundamental change to everything they understood about themselves. General Castrix activated his combat analysis protocols, viewing Dr. Chen's words through the lens of military strategy. "Even if what you're saying is true, why would humanity offer to guide other species through transcendence? What do you gain from it?" Dr. Chen's expression softened with something that might have been compassion. "General, consciousness is more interesting when it's diverse. Transcendence pursued alone leads to isolation and eventual stagnation. Transcendence pursued collectively creates infinite possibilities for growth and discovery." "You're talking about the most fundamental change possible," Admiral Thexna said. "The transformation of the basic nature of intelligence, consciousness, and existence itself. How can you be so casual about something that would alter everything we are?" "Because," Dr. Chen replied, "change is what consciousness does. You've all been changing constantly throughout your individual lives and your species' histories. Transcendence is just change at a larger scale." She gestured to the holographic display again, and new images appeared. scenes from the daily lives of various galactic species, but viewed from perspectives that revealed hidden complexities and capabilities. Look at yourselves honestly, Dr. Chen continued. Admiral Thexna, your species has been unconsciously developing collective consciousness for the past 1,000 years. You share thoughts and emotions across your population without recognizing it as anything extraordinary. Admiral Thexna started to protest, then stopped as she realized the truth of Dr. Chen's words. The warrior clans had always attributed their tactical coordination to superior training and communication, but the reality was far more profound. Dr. Yelana, your crystalline hierarchy processes information by becoming temporarily connected to the fundamental forces of reality. You think you're using advanced technology, but you're actually manipulating matter and energy at the quantum level through conscious intent. Dr. Yelana's form flickered with what could only be recognition. The scientific instruments her people used weren't separate devices. They were extensions of their own consciousness, allowing them to directly interface with the universe at levels they had never acknowledged. General Castrix, your cybernetic implants aren't just technological enhancements. They're evolutionary adaptations that allow your consciousness to interface with mechanical systems. You're already transcending the boundary between biological and artificial intelligence. General Castrix's implants pulsed as he processed this revelation. His people's relationship with technology had always seemed like simple tool use, but Dr. Chen was suggesting something far more profound, a merger of consciousness and mechanism that was already in progress. And you, Chancellor Omrix, Dr. Chen said, turning to the ancient leader, have been unconsciously manipulating time perception for centuries. Your wisdom comes from your ability to experience multiple temporal perspectives simultaneously. Chancellor Omrix remained silent, but her ancient eyes reflected acknowledgement of a truth she had never articulated. Every species here has capabilities that you've dismissed as normal aspects of your existence, Dr. Chen continued. You've all been unconsciously transcending the limitations of purely biological intelligence for thousands of years. Humanity's only difference is that we've chosen to acknowledge what we're doing. The implications cascaded through the assembly as each delegate recognized the hidden potentials that Dr. Chen was revealing. If she was correct, then galactic civilization was already in the early stages of collective transcendence, but without conscious awareness or deliberate direction. Why reveal this now? Ambassador Kelrix asked. Why not allow the process to continue unconsciously? Dr. Chen's expression became serious. Because unconscious transcendence leads to chaos. Species develop capabilities they can't understand or control. Civilizations fragment as different groups evolve in incompatible directions. Eventually, everything collapses into conflict or isolation. She gestured to historical data showing the fragmentation and disappearance of previous galactic civilizations. This has happened before, multiple times. Galactic civilization reaches a certain level of development, unconscious transcendence begins, and everything falls apart within a few thousand years. But conscious transcendence could be different, Dr. Vexai asked. Conscious transcendence allows for coordination, Dr. Chen replied. Species can choose compatible evolutionary paths. Capabilities can be developed in ways that enhance cooperation rather than creating conflict. The process becomes constructive rather than destructive. General Castrix processed the strategic implications. Dr. Chen, you're proposing the most ambitious transformation in galactic history, the deliberate evolution of hundreds of species into something beyond current understanding. The risks are incalculable. The risks of unconscious transcendence are greater, Dr. Chen replied. At least with conscious evolution we can choose our direction. Chancellor Omrix spoke with the weight of her centuries of experience. Dr. Chen, assuming you're correct about our hidden capabilities, how would conscious transcendence actually work? How do you guide hundreds of diverse species through simultaneous evolution? Dr. Chen smiled, and her expression held depths that suggested vast knowledge and experience. The same way evolution has always worked, through cooperation, adaptation, and gradual change. The difference is that we choose the direction and pace of change rather than leaving it to chance. She modified the holographic display to show potential evolutionary paths for each major species, with interconnections that suggested collaborative development rather than isolated transformation. Each species would transcend in ways that enhanced their existing strengths while developing new capabilities that complement other species' evolution. Diversity would be preserved and expanded rather than lost. And humanity would guide this process? Admiral Thexna asked. Humanity would help coordinate it, Dr. Chen corrected. We've had more conscious experience with evolutionary adaptation, but that doesn't make us superior to other species. It just makes us experienced guides. Dr. Yelana's analytical mind focused on practical concerns. Dr. Chen, what you're describing would take thousands or millions of years. How do we know that humanity won't change its priorities during such an extended process? Dr. Chen's response was immediate and certain. Because transcendence isn't a destination, it's a way of being. Once you choose conscious evolution, the process itself becomes its own reward. Humanity isn't trying to reach some final state. We're trying to become something that continues growing indefinitely. The concept was both reassuring and unsettling. If transcendence was an ongoing process rather than an end state, it meant that change would be constant and unlimited. Dr. Chen, Ambassador Kelrick said carefully, what happens to galactic civilization as we know it? To our cultures, our histories, our individual identities? Dr. Chen's expression became gentle. They become more than they are. Transcendence doesn't erase what exists, it expands it. Your cultures become richer, your histories more meaningful, your identities more complete. Or, General Castrix countered, they become unrecognizable. How do we know that transcendent versions of ourselves will value the same things we do now? Because, Dr. Chen replied, transcendence isn't about becoming something alien to yourself. It's about becoming more yourself than you've ever been able to be. The debate continued for hours as each delegate grappled with the choice Dr. Chen was presenting. Accept humanity's guidance toward conscious transcendence, with all the risks and possibilities that entailed. Or continue on the current path of unconscious evolution, with the historical certainty that such processes led to fragmentation and collapse. By the end of the session, no decisions had been made, but the fundamental nature of the choice facing galactic civilization had become clear. They could evolve consciously together toward something unprecedented in the history of the universe. Or they could follow the pattern of every previous galactic civilization and fragment into isolated transcendence or collective collapse. The choice would determine not just the future of each individual species, but the nature of consciousness itself across the galaxy. 6 months after Dr. Chen's revelation, the galaxy was transforming in ways that defied every prediction and exceeded every fear. The choice to embrace conscious transcendence had not been made unanimously. It had been made inevitably, as the truth of humanity's words became undeniable through direct experience. Ambassador Kelrick stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed synthesis station, watching ships from hundreds of worlds arriving for the first Transcendence Council. The station itself was impossible by previous galactic standards, a structure that existed simultaneously in normal space and several dimensional phases, built through the combined efforts of species whose capabilities had expanded dramatically in just 6 months. The transformation had begun with the crystalline hierarchy. Within weeks of Dr. Chen's presentation, Dr. Yelana's people had acknowledged their unconscious reality manipulation and chosen to develop it deliberately. Their crystal cities now grew in patterns that optimized information flow across entire star systems, and their consciousness had expanded to encompass quantum-level awareness of matter and energy. The warrior clans had been next. Admiral Thexna's species embraced their collective consciousness capabilities, developing coordination so precise that individual identity began to merge with group awareness. Their military formations now moved with a unity that made them nearly invincible, but they used their power exclusively for protection and peacekeeping. Even General Castrix's mechanized hegemony had undergone radical evolution. Their merger with artificial intelligence had accelerated, creating hybrid beings that were simultaneously biological and technological. They had become living systems capable of interfacing directly with any technology in the galaxy, while maintaining the ethical framework and emotional depth of organic consciousness. The changes were not uniform across all species. Some had chosen conservative evolutionary paths, developing their existing capabilities gradually while maintaining their traditional cultures. Others had embraced radical transformation, becoming something entirely new while retaining the essential characteristics that defined their identity. Kelrix himself had undergone changes he could never have imagined. His diplomatic abilities had expanded to include genuine empathic communication, allowing him to understand other beings at levels far deeper than language. He could feel the genuine intentions behind words, sense the emotional subtext of negotiations, and sometimes even share brief moments of consciousness with other transcendent beings. The process had not been without challenges. 3 species had initially rejected the transcendence offer, choosing instead to maintain their traditional limitations. 2 of those species had quickly realized their mistake as they watched their neighbors develop capabilities that made cooperation more rewarding than conflict. They had joined the process within months. The 3rd species, the Isolationist Collective, had withdrawn entirely from galactic civilization, establishing heavily defended territories where traditional evolution continued unchanged. Humanity had respected their choice, establishing protection protocols that prevented any interference with their development while keeping transcendent species from accidentally overwhelming their space. "The old patterns are breaking down," a voice said behind him. Kelrix turned to see Dr. Chen approaching, though she was no longer quite the same person who had attended that first crucial meeting. Her consciousness had expanded to encompass multiple dimensional perspectives, and her presence carried the weight of vast knowledge and experience. "But new patterns are emerging," Kelrix replied. "Patterns that seem more stable and sustainable than anything we've seen before." Dr. Chen joined him at the observation window, her enhanced awareness automatically cataloging the arrival of delegates from across the galaxy. Conscious evolution allows for error correction in ways that natural evolution can't. When we make mistakes, we can adjust course instead of being locked into unsuccessful patterns. Is that what happened to the previous transcendent species? They made mistakes they couldn't correct. They made the mistake of assuming transcendence meant separation, Dr. Chen explained. They thought that becoming more than they were required abandoning what they had been. Humanity realized that true transcendence means expanding what you are, not replacing it. The observation deck began filling with other delegates as the council session approached. Kelrix watched beings that represented the new diversity of galactic consciousness, crystalline entities that processed information at quantum speeds, collective intelligences that spanned multiple bodies, hybrid biological technological beings, and others whose nature defied traditional classification. Yet despite their transformed capabilities, they remained recognizably themselves. The crystalline hierarchy still valued precision and analytical thinking. The warrior clans maintained their commitment to honor and protection. The mechanized hegemony continued their pursuit of perfect integration between consciousness and technology. "Dr. Chen," Kelrix said as they prepared to enter the council chamber, "there's something that's been troubling me. If humanity knew this was possible all along, why wait so long to reveal it? Why not guide galactic civilization toward transcendence decades or centuries ago?" Dr. Chen paused, her expression showing the depth of consideration that had become characteristic of transcendent consciousness. Because readiness can't be forced. Galactic civilization needed to develop to the point where conscious evolution was seen as opportunity rather than threat. If we had revealed these possibilities too early, they would have been rejected or misused. And now the galaxy is ready to become what it was always capable of being. The first Transcendence Council convened in a chamber that existed partially outside normal spacetime, allowing for communication methods that transcended language, culture, and even individual consciousness. Representatives from over 300 worlds participated in a form of dialogue that was simultaneously debate, collaboration, and shared exploration. The primary agenda item was deceptively simple: establishing protocols for ongoing conscious evolution that would preserve diversity while preventing the fragmentation that had destroyed previous galactic civilizations. High Chancellor Omrix, now capable of experiencing multiple temporal perspectives simultaneously, opened the session by sharing her expanded awareness of galactic history. Through her enhanced consciousness, delegates experienced the rise and fall of previous civilizations, feeling the excitement of discovery, the fear of change, and the tragedy of collapse that had repeatedly characterized galactic development. "We stand at a threshold," her words resonated through multiple dimensional layers. reaching each delegate in forms optimized for their evolved consciousness. For the first time in galactic history, we have the opportunity to choose our evolutionary path collectively rather than stumbling toward it individually. Dr. Yelena, her crystalline consciousness now interfacing directly with the fundamental forces of reality, shared her analysis of transcendence patterns. Through her expanded awareness, delegates experienced mathematical models that described consciousness itself as an evolving system, with galactic civilization representing a crucial phase transition toward something unprecedented. Conscious evolution at this scale has never been attempted. Her communication carried the precision of quantum-level analysis. But our preliminary modeling suggests that coordinated transcendence could create stable patterns of growth that avoid the collapse cycles that have characterized previous galactic civilizations. General Castrix, now a hybrid being that was simultaneously biological consciousness and technological system, presented security analysis from perspectives that encompassed both organic intuition and computational precision. His assessment was optimistic but cautious. The primary risks come not from external threats, but from internal coordination challenges. His multi-layered communication included tactical assessments, philosophical implications, and emotional nuances. As species develop new capabilities, maintaining communication and cooperation becomes increasingly complex. We need frameworks that allow for unlimited growth while preserving the ability to work together. The discussion continued for hours, with delegates sharing insights and concerns through communication methods that were simultaneously logical debate and artistic expression. The transcendent consciousness allowed for exchange of ideas at speeds and depths impossible for traditional galactic civilization. Gradually, consensus emerged around a framework that seemed to address the major challenges while preserving maximum freedom for individual species development. The Transcendence Accords, as they came to be known, established principles that would guide conscious evolution across the galaxy. First, transcendence would be voluntary for all species, with protection for those who chose traditional evolutionary paths. Second, no species would develop capabilities that fundamentally threatened the existence or freedom of other species. Third, expanded consciousness would be used to enhance cooperation rather than enable domination. Most importantly, the Accords established the Guidance Collective, a group of representatives from all transcendent species who would help coordinate development and resolve conflicts that arose from mismatched evolutionary paths. As the council session concluded, Kelrix realized that they had just established the foundation for something truly unprecedented, a galactic civilization based on conscious growth rather than fixed limitations. Dr. Chen approached him as delegates began departing through various dimensional transitions and technological interfaces. Ambassador, your species will be ready for expanded transcendence protocols within the next few months. Are you prepared for changes that will exceed what you've experienced so far? Kelrix considered the question seriously. His current level of transcendence had already transformed every aspect of his existence, yet Dr. Chen was suggesting changes that would go far beyond even these radical adaptations. Dr. Chen, where does this process end? What is the ultimate destination of conscious transcendence? Dr. Chen's response carried the weight of vast experience and unlimited possibility. Ambassador, that's the most wonderful aspect of conscious evolution. There is no ultimate destination. Transcendence means choosing to grow indefinitely, to continue becoming more than you are forever. The concept was simultaneously thrilling and overwhelming. Instead of evolution towards some final state, they were embarking on a path of endless development and discovery. But doesn't unlimited growth eventually lead to something beyond recognition? Kelrix asked. How do we maintain our essential identity while changing continuously? By recognizing that identity isn't a fixed thing, Dr. Chen replied. Your essential self isn't what you are, it's how you choose to grow. As long as you make conscious decisions about your development, you remain yourself no matter how extensively you change. As Synthesis Station returned to normal space and delegates departed for their home worlds, Kelrix reflected on the magnitude of what they had accomplished. In less than a year, galactic civilization had transformed from a collection of species with fixed limitations into a coordinated consciousness capable of unlimited growth. The old galaxy, with its predictable species and stable civilizations, was ending. In its place, something unprecedented was beginning, a transcendent consciousness that encompassed hundreds of worlds while preserving the diversity and individuality that made existence meaningful. Looking out at the stars, Kelrix realized that they were no longer just points of light marking the locations of various worlds and civilizations. They were nodes in an expanding network of consciousness that would continue growing and developing indefinitely. Humanity had kept its promise. They had not transcended alone, abandoning galactic civilization to pursue individual evolution. Instead, they had guided everyone toward a form of collective transcendence that preserved what was valuable about the past while creating unlimited possibilities for the future. The true name of humanity, those who choose what they become, had become the defining characteristic of galactic civilization itself. Every species was now human in the most fundamental sense, consciously choosing their evolutionary path rather than accepting limitations imposed by biology or circumstance. And the journey toward whatever they would become next was just beginning.